Hey there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back. It's another Red Pill Religion podcast, Red Pill Religion, where we, amongst the things we say, is that it is okay to criticize any religious or non-religious group, ethnicity, or culture, especially its leadership and most prominent members. If you like the kind of work we do here on Red Pill Religion, please be sure to check us out on redpillreligion.com. We've been censored and shadow banned and lost multiple channels so far here on YouTube. We're still investigating alternatives so we can be a little safer. Fundraiser coming this week, should be by Thursday. But please, we could use your support. If you ever lose us here on YouTube or other sites, find us on redpillreligion.com. Please hit the tip jar through PayPal or Subscribestar. We're looking currently at WeGather app. And please find us on what looks like the best free social media at the moment is Dissenter and Gab. Find us at Red Pill Religion on those. Find us on your other social media too. All right, tonight we are joined again by our good friend and official. Most people don't know Aaron's been an official part of the Red Pill Religion team for more than a year, right?
Yeah. I mean, at least indirectly, just kind of socially, maybe. I don't know.
Well, yeah, so people know Aaron's done some work on our website for us. He's done work helping set us up our store. He helps moderate discussions on our various social media, and he's one of the crew who's on Red Pill Religion. People should know this. We've also got a bunch of other people like Andrew and Josh and Oda and quite a few other people that are behind the scenes. But we recently put up a video by Aaron, right? I really liked that interview you did with the Muslim guy who was talking about defunding Israel or boycotting Israel.
Yeah, Dr. Dean Ahmad. He is the director of, I think it is, or president or founder or something like that of the Minaret of Freedom Institute.
Yeah,
libertarian think tank.
So everybody might want to go look for Boycott and Sanction Israel. Aaron discusses with Elmad al-Din Ahmad. Can't say it. Then I'll go look for his Isle of Aaron channel too. I should make sure we get a link up to that after the show. So anyway, Aaron, who is Jewish, you're Jewish, right? I hear you might be Jewish.
I am, according to the philosophical views expressed by many of my family members who I grew up around, am both ethnically Jewish, and I am also a reformist religious Jew who kind of lost interest, so to speak, for different reasons.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
So you've got a family history of being Jewish, and you've got some religious history as a Jew that's back and forth. But Aaron, who is Jewish, is going to be discussing with me the Jewish. First off, we're going to be talking about the Jewish revolutionary spirit by E. Michael Jones, and we're going to be talking about E. Michael Jones and his provocative thesis. For anybody who doesn't know much, we have interviewed Dr. Jones a couple of times, actually, and I find him a delight to talk to. He's made me cringe any number of times, but I have to say, honestly, I don't think he's an anti-Semite. Do you, Aaron?
No. I mean, I didn't get that. I think that it could be easily misconstrued that way by people who are way more defensive about their Jewish identity. Because he's critical, but I didn't really get that general vibe from listening to him. And I read, some of his. I've listened to some of his other streams, and I've read a little bit of his work too. And he seems to be more just criticizing Judaism and the Jewish identity in a way that might not necessarily seem very convenient
or friendly, convenient, right? But he's not a hater, and his thesis is provocative. You can tell that he certainly presses some people's buttons, though, because he gets censored. In fact, I put a link up to it I strongly suggest everybody do yourself a favor, go to E. Michael Jones's channel and look for Zionists, Feminists, Atheists, and Conspiracies. That is the Red Pill Religion interview with E. Michael Jones that was sandboxed and censored by YouTube. I keep calling it out. It's not even the best interview we ever did, to be honest. E. Michael Jones causes me to talk too much because his ideas are so provocative. But please go see that video. And I've let his ideas and my conversations with him and his articles and listening to his talks percolate through enough. And I finally decided, you know what? I don't know if he's got the definitive definition of the Jew, but he makes many good points. And it caused me to say, well, there's more than one way of defining the Jewish people. As E. Michael Jones says, since the Jews will not define themselves, we can, in any consistent fashion, we're free to define what makes sense to us. And so I think that's nothing unfair about that. I'll repeat again, it's okay to criticize any religious or non-religious group, ethnicity, or culture, especially its leadership and most prominent members. Now, I'm going to send this to Dr. Jones probably. I don't know if he'll be interested or not. This might even be expandable into an article. In thinking about his ideas the last few weeks, it suddenly kind of interestingly made me automatically able to think more clearly about what kind of person I'm talking to when I talk to someone who self-identifies as a Jew. Because I do want to say, I have had friends in the Jewish community going back decades. Although I grew up in very Christian America and never met my first Jew until I was in my 20s. But since then, I've gotten along with and had friends with secular Jews, Jews of various orientations, religions, cultural backgrounds. I've always liked Jews, actually. A bit of a Judeophile, you might say, because I've always enjoyed Jewish culture. Jewish stuff is funny. And by the way, for the record, I've said this many times, but it's true. Orthodox Jews who were friendly to me were also a serious influence on me in becoming Christian, because as an atheist, I truly could not understand why anyone would think there was a God, and Orthodox Jews actually helped me get over that hump intellectually. Just the very idea that there was a God at all was really hard for me, and they helped. And that eventually got me to Jesus. And I will also say, for the record, although some Jews don't like the choice I made, which is the Catholic religion, more than one congratulated me when I became Catholic. And one of them, a very serious Orthodox Jew, said, truthfully, the Catholicism is the only kind of Christianity we really respect, which I found a very interesting remark. And sorry if that hurts any Protestant people's friends, but in any case, that just describes my own look at it. But it's an ongoing problem. How do you define them? And the way E. Michael Jones defines them is in a very simplifying way. People who rejected Jesus Christ, and by extension, in his view, reject Logos, which is a Greek philosophical idea that has underpinned Western civilization for about 2,000 years, or what we call Western civilization. I find that if you do that, there seems to be a lot of truth to it. And if you just go on the Jesus angle alone, it does seem like most Jews, a starting definition to their own self-identity is saying we're definitely not Christians. And so when I look at that, I finally see it. I see that Jews get made up of what to me look like 5 distinctly identifiable groups. The first is the globalist Marxists. I think it's time we all admit that Marxism and communism and globalism are all lousy with Jewish people, with people with Jewish surnames. Just tons of them all over the place in secular progressive circles. And I enjoy reading some of them. Probably one of the most interesting one was David Horowitz and Ron Radish and a few others. But okay, you have your globalist Marxists. Then you have the Zionists, which for the longest time, I think I was in denial about the nature of what Zionism is. But Zionism, when you really get down to it and look at the writings and look at the people, is a secular nationalist movement. Whoops, I got a message from somebody that doesn't belong on this stream. That's all right. So once you realize that Israel and Israeli nationalism and Israeli centrism is really what Zionism is, and that Zionism is a secular ideology. What Zionists are and what Zionists do and how they think becomes very easy to understand. Then you have your absorbent Orthodox, or what some call your Conservadox Jews. These are different because while they may have sympathies with the Zionists sometimes, in general they're not. Then you have your ordinary schlub Jews, which are just normal everyday people who just want to live and let live. And then you have the Jews that want to convert to Christ. To say a little bit more about it, one of the things I've noticed about Marxist Jews, and it's kind of a fly in the ointment a little bit, I think, to Jones's thesis, but maybe not, because the rejection of logos is still there. One of the things I've noticed about Marxist Jews is they intensely hate their own Jewish identity. I find that sometimes that will be misconstrued as them, quote unquote, hiding their Jewish identity, but having known any number of Marxist Jews, some of whom didn't admit they were Marxists, but I later found out they were. Also in reading about people, reading the works of people like David Horowitz and Ron Radish and other former Jewish radicals, and the work of some Jewish radicals, it's very noticeable that Marxists tend to hate their own Jewish identity, period. Like they will get mad if it gets brought up amongst themselves. They don't want to be thought of that way. If you read David Horowitz's book, Radical Son, which was a fabulous autobiography published in, I believe, the 90s, about his past as a Jewish communist from New York, there was an amazing scene toward the end of toward the end of his days as a communist, when he was at a university sitting in a private meeting of a bunch of radicals, including some very famous radicals of the 70s. And he started asking questions, and then he asked the whole group. Now, this is David Horowitz, who's Jewish. He looks at the whole group and says, and has any of us noticed that almost all of us here are Jewish or partially Jewish? And the whole room was almost all Jews, and they all hated him for bringing it up and were offended, and that was like part of getting him expelled from communism, because they hate their Jewish identity that much. But otherwise, they're your dyed-in-the-wool commies, and there's a lot of them. Then you have the Zionists. The Zionists, to me, were the longest to figure out until I really realized, no, they're secular ethnic nationalists. They're nationalists who look to the Jewish people as a whole as the most important thing. The land of Israel is their control of Israel is the most important thing. And like ethnic nationalists often do, they do have world domination ideas and imperialist ideas. Zionism is a secular ethnic nationalist movement. Once you see it that way, it really makes a lot else make more sense. Furthermore, I will note that Zionists frequently severely mistreat and abuse or take advantage of pious religious Jews. They hate them. I talked about this with Misha Popov and others, and a number of my Orthodox Jewish friends agree. So that also goes a little against Michael Jones, but I'm not sure. Then you have your religious Jews. The religious Jews are the most complex, but not really. The religious, serious Jews really believe there's a God. They aren't kidding. The religious observant Jews will criticize Zionism, will criticize Marxists. I find that the pious observant Orthodox Jews really tend to hate communists a lot, and thus have no sympathy for their Jewish communist friends, relatives, whatever you want to call them. For Jewish communists, they hate them. Some do support Israel, but are still critical, especially of the current government there. And many of the most anti-Zionist people in the world are conservative or are Orthodox Jews. Some of the most outspoken are anti-Zionist. It's useful to notice this. They also generally hate porn. They hate prostitution. They want nothing to do with the LGBT thing, and they despise things like they'll actually tell you that within Talmud, no, they're not allowed to treat Gentiles poorly. They're not allowed to corrupt their morals. That those are quotes out of context. That if you hear the Talmud says this or that, they're pulling way out of context. They hate the porn culture. They hate all of the stuff that often gets accused. I've heard E. Michael Jones talk about the porn merchants as the Jews, and I sit there and think of my Orthodox Jewish friends, and I think that's nuts. They hate pornography. Finally, there's your everyday schlub Jews. Your everyday schlub Jews really, they may have a little sympathy in any one of these directions, or all of them, or none at all, because they're just people trying to live normal lives and they happen to be Jewish. They don't, and they may even vacillate. So they're Zionists 1 year, and 5 years later, they're thinking about getting religious. And, they had a communist phase at one point, like a lot of people. They're just ordinary people, though, is what I'm saying. They just want to live and let live, and they have no real agenda, which is important to note. That would be the vast majority of Jews. And even the religious ones mostly. And then finally, and this is the other one that gets tricky, it's the Jews who accept Christ. Now, the way I see it is that this is somewhat also a fly in the ointment, maybe, and we can discuss it, for E. Michael Jones's theory, but it's also support for his theory, because Jews who become Christians, by and large, my observation is that all the other groups of Jews, even the ordinary schlub Jews, will frequently vilify them and hate them and cast them out as traitors. What I find interesting is that members of all four of the other groups will do that. I mean, not all of them. There's Jewish Christians, and they aren't completely repelled, hated by every Jew, but it's very noticeable. A Jew who's I've heard secular Jews, I've heard Zionist Jews, Marxist Jews, Jews of all sorts say, a Jew for Jesus, that's a contradiction in terms. That probably supports E. Michael Jones's hypothesis the most, however, that all the other groups tend to have this reaction. Although I would say they would probably have the same reaction to a Jew becoming a Muslim, maybe some other religions, don't know. But what I find all that does, though, I think that if we look at these 5 categories, I think we have actually got a pretty good look at every kind of Jew there is. What do you think, Aaron?
Yeah. I mean, it seems, generally speaking, in terms of sort of anthropological, theological kind of sense, it seems to be pretty accurate.
And I don't think it should be offensive either, honestly. I actually think some Jews I know might look at this and go, "Yeah, that looks pretty on the money as a description." I mean, it's my own invention. It's what came to me, But as soon as I wrote this down, I'm like, now I see every Jew as in one of these. Yeah. Every Jew I've ever met is one of these. Yeah, and I've done a lot. So I think it works. It also, I think, points to what can be troubling, or what has always troubled me about listening to E. Michael Jones talk about the Jews, because he will say things that make me wince, and then I have to go, well, but I'm not Jewish, by the way, but like I'm a sensitive liberal type, I guess. He'll say it, and I'm like, that made me uncomfortable, but there also seems to be something not quite there. And I'm thinking, like how the Jews gave us porn. And I'm thinking of all my religious Jew friends, and I know my pious religious Jew friends had nothing to do with any of that crap, because they hate that crap, and they hate Hollywood. But once you realize, oh, well, that's because they're a religious Jew. They're Orthodox, and they're serious about it. And by the way, Hollywood hates pious Jews. Have you not noticed this? Have you ever noticed this, Jaron? Hollywood, for the most part, hates pious Jews.
That seems to make sense. I've never really thought about it all that much until you brought it up, but that would make sense. I do think that they tend to glamorize the more it's glamorization and sort of demonization. It's kind of a strange I don't know. It's almost like how, well, I don't know. It's almost like how feminists will tend to kind of paint women as having all this power, but being totally oppressed. It's almost like Hollywood does the same thing with Jewish people. I don't know. It's just some. I just it's something that occurred to me after you brought that up.
Go ahead.
You know, and then the also simultaneously, you know, kind of demonize the more religious.
Well, yeah, there's the thing. By the way, we have a comment. Don says, Jews who convert are not therefore Jews. Dialogue with and about the Jews only benefits the Jews. Okay, so he says a Jew who converts to Christ is not a Jew. So you agree with that sentiment? There are Jewish Christians who disagree with that. So you take it up with them. Although I would grant to you that Jews who convert to Christ, usually by the time their grandchildren come along, assuming they have children and grandchildren, usually their grandchildren are talking like, yeah, my grandpa was Jewish. They're no longer really part of the Jewish culture. That's what usually seems to be the case. But I don't get what dialogue with and about the Jews only benefits the Jews. What on earth does that mean? Because with or about, so basically do not speak to a Jew and never speak of the Jews. Well, what? I'm sorry, I don't understand that comment, John. What?
We could apply that to any group of people. It's almost like bad publicity is good publicity. You know?
Yeah. No, I actually think it's useful to. I really am the area where I am the most sympathetic with E. Michael Jones by far on the Jewish question. I mean, I'm very sympathetic with him on most things, and I see a lot of merit in his Jewishness, his Jew discussions. However, they do lack finesse sometimes. They do definitely lack finesse. However, just going with his assumption, I think this actually is a useful taxonomy. You can look at a Jew and know probably a whole lot about him and say, if you can, it's not fair, pin him into one of these five, but really it will be. This is at least as accurate as identifying someone as a Seattle hipster white guy versus an Irish Catholic white guy. But yeah.
There's something else. There's a couple of things I want to add, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
So first, I actually attended a day camp, a summer camp, for it was the Jewish Community Center who ran the day camp, and it was at a Jesuit center, in Paradise Valley, I think, Arizona.
Right. There's been a lot.
You know, so
the Jesuits have been very much part of what's called Jewish Catholic interfaith dialogue.
Yeah, and so I just wanted to bring that up, you know, for different reasons. One, you know, because you know, for anybody out there who might be listening who doesn't know about the relationship between Jesuits and you know, and Jewish organizations like the Jewish Community Center, you know, they've actually housed, you know, summer camps. So, you know, if I wouldn't have had anything else to do during the summer growing up with a single Jewish mother in a Reformed Jewish family, if it were not for the Jesuits. You know, so give them props.
You give them props because they let them run a Jewish school.
Yeah, and that's one example just out of my own personal life. I'm sure there's plenty more that I could find of the Jesuits actually, you know, helping the Jewish community and then also the taxonomy that you're presenting, it seems very representative of you know, people who are not just Jews.
Quite so.
And one of the you know, one of the things I've heard from rabbis, even Orthodox rabbis, and actually not just from Orthodox rabbis, but from Orthodox rabbis, and other people I've known who were also just ethnic and not necessarily Orthodox Jews, is that Judaism is a very human religion. It's very representative of all kinds of different aspects of being human. And so it makes sense that you could see these patterns in other areas of society and other religions, and
you would see this. You actually would see this in a lot of other ethnic groups, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and there's plenty of people who aren't Jewish
yeah.
reject. There's also plenty of people who aren't Jewish who reject logos.
Yes. Yes.
So that's something else I'd like to point out.
Yes.
In all
in all fairness, it should be pointed out that, and maybe E. Michael Jones could say it like that once in a while, that there are plenty of non-Jews who reject logos, and they aren't all being led by Jews. Not all of them. Some of them are, though, and I guess it's fair to say that too. So, all right, well, I think we've made our point here, and I would like to just close it here. I'll send this to E. Michael Jones. He may or may not be interested or may not like it. I might even pitch an article on this thesis if it catches on. I do think this is a really useful way of looking at things. And I think it also, though, helps to explain the dichotomy and does reveal some issues with E. Michael Jones. It mostly supports him. But I think the fact that Marxist Jews are atheist and hate their own Jewish identity a lot, so much so they hate bringing it up amongst each other, is a little bit of a problem. But maybe we should come back and have a conversation on that. I'd love to have a conversation with some Jews about the issue of Zionism and how I think it's fair to call it an ethnic nationalist movement. I think that's really what it is. And it's very secular, by the way, even though there are religious Jews who are into it some. At its core, it's very secular. You got the religious folks and you got the ordinary schlubs. So, tell you what, we'll close it here. Did you have a final remark, Aaron, before we close it? Because we do want to close soon.
Yeah, something regarding what you were just talking about with the Marxist Jews and self-hatred and all that. And it's something I've kind of experienced to some extent, and I would say that it's that there's that whole broad generalization of the self-hating Jew. And
I think that comes from the frickin' progressive Marxist leaning ones. I think that's really where that comes from.
I think that there may be a lot of truth to that. Plus, I don't think it's all it's cracked up to be either. If you consider just the idea of self-hatred in general, where does it come from? It comes from, in my opinion, as somebody who's experienced it, it's come from being told repetitively that you should hate your identity as a male. You should hate your identity as as an oppressor. You should hate your identity. There's all of these different negative things that you're being told over and over again by all these different people, all these different institutions about, it not just a ethnic and religious identity, but even your biological identity and your just who your essence as a human being. And when you kind of put that into perspective in terms of Marxism and the whole idea of a self-hating Jew, it makes things a little bit more complicated.
I think so. Actually, I think it makes it simpler. We might come back for another discussion on that. And I invite any other Jews with an opinion, and I know Jews have opinions. They have lots and lots of those. They love to argue, and that's a friendly stereotype that's very true. Anybody who's learned and wants to talk about this, I'm open to that. I'm very fascinated by this conversation. And I think it's refreshing actually to speak of an influential ethnic group like we would speak of any other ethnic group, whether we're talking about Irish Catholics or Russians and Russian Orthodox or English atheists or just the English, the British. We can talk about the French. As E. Michael Jones says, somebody is suing for Poland for reparations, and somebody is trying to get reparations money. Now, who's doing that? People we would call the Jews. Although actually, if you taxonomize it out, it's a little more interesting that way, because that's a demand from Zionists. It's not a demand from globalists. Globalists aren't particular. They might like Israel, but they more often don't. They want all nations obliterated. Remember, all cultures, all religions. That's the Marxist way. So we're going to leave this here and see if it starts more discussion with among E. Michael Jones fans, Red Pill Religion fans, or anybody else. And anybody wants to talk more about this in a serious way, come on board. So please, otherwise, here on YouTube, give us a like and give us a subscribe. Tell your friends or enemies. Hit that subscribe bell. Go over and see our censored video on E. Michael Jones's channel, Zionists, Feminists, Atheists, and Conspiracies. Watch it just because they don't want you to. And you can. I don't think it was just Jews that doesn't want to watch that. So anyway, do go check it out and give us a like, give us a subscribe. God bless everybody.